Well, here we go again. It's Orange and Blue Today, presented by Sean Ponda, Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason, talking about this Broncos team facing Kansas City, and we're already here. Our pregame's tomorrow, so make sure to tune in Thursday. But we're here, Mace. You get past these games quickly because it's on to the next one.
Yeah, well, especially Thursday night, right? I mean, you're basically turning around within about 76 hours and you're playing another game. When the Broncos practiced on Tuesday, no helmets. It was a hat day. It's basically a glorified walkthrough. You don't want to have any physical contact there. I'm laughing just because of our pre-show discussion.
Yes, interesting show discussions.
We were discussing some interesting songs that aren't the most appropriate anymore.
Right.
I digress. But yeah, you're not hitting. It's jog through. You're minimizing the wear and tear just so you can be ready for the game. You got to master that quick turnaround. There's also only so much you can do game prep wise when you're facing a divisional opponent, or you're facing a divisional opponent on a short week. But facing a divisional opponent does help because you've got some familiarity going in.
Right. And I didn't get a chance to ask you last week. I don't necessarily believe it, but I think it's an interesting back and forth. Maybe you won't think it's interesting, but is there any chance they were just overlooking the Jets for KC?
No.
Any chance whatsoever? Because you mentioned preparation. You're kind of almost trying to prepare ahead without preparing ahead.
If you're 1-3 and you're looking past an opponent, then you deserve
what happens.
You deserve to lose, as my Uncle Bill would have said. They deserve to lose. If they deserve to lose. They deserve to lose the game for a lot of other reasons. Though. They deserve to lose because they couldn't stop the run, because 11 traffic cones probably could have played better defense, at least against the run. Pass defense was all right, but you were facing Zach Wilson, who may not be one of the best 32 quarterbacks walking the earth. You're facing Patrick Mahomes on Thursday night. He is probably the best quarterback walking the face of the earth.
Right. And maybe we'll get more into this tomorrow, but when we talk about the red zone, like, hey, red zone and the Jets, they made him kick a bunch of field goals. That is Zach Wilson. I'm not sure if your red zone defense can quite keep up with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah. Everything has to be taken with a grain of salt. It's Zach Wilson. It's Nathaniel Hackett, play caller. And look, Hackett is taking a victory lap today, or his team is, and they earned that right, no doubt. They beat the Broncos on Sunday. But how many touchdowns did Nathaniel Hackett's offense have?
One time.
That's something we got quite used to around here last year, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
So, did they really fix the glitches, or did they just play a bad defense?
We fixed the glitch.
So Milton won't get a paycheck anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Are we Milton? Are the Broncos Milton? Oh, my God.
They're going to take their traveler's checks to a competing resort? Is that what you're saying?
There was salt, no salt in the margarita.
I could set the place on fire. Well, I mean, in all seriousness, if they're 1-5, and Sean Payton kind of played this down about the notion of trading players, that's not something that they're considering. But at 1-5, if you lose on Thursday night, that phone's going to ring and you should be accepting the calls.
Yeah. You're going to be traveling on Friday, just a programming note, but keep your phone on, Mace, because I'm going to be texting you and be like, they might be doing stuff on Friday. And you see Van Jefferson, what was that on Tuesday, where Van Jefferson traded away from the Rams because they're not using them because Puka Nacua showed up and made big plays and didn't stop when Cooper Kupp came back. So you already have teams making moves and you don't want to be caught behind with other teams that maybe want to trade.
And also, I mean, Van Jefferson on the move. I mean, you get Van Jefferson, that's one less team that's looking for a Jerry Jeudy, right?
Exactly.
Or a Cortland Sutton.
Right.
The supply and demand thing. Now, I think the Broncos will have some interest if they put some players on the market. If Justin Simmons is on the market, he's going to get interest, no doubt. The interest for Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy may be underwhelming, though, because they play wide receiver. There are a glut of wide receivers. It's easy to find wide receivers. If anything, if you want to poke some holes in George Payton's team-building strategy of a couple of years ago, it's paying 2 wide receivers. It is right now having the highest paid wide receiver room in the NFL. What are you doing?
Right.
You're certainly not you're not getting the production, but wide receivers, they're not that hard to find. Running backs who can be productive are not hard to find.
Right.
You spend where there's a scarcity, right? Garrett Bowles, it's been up and down for him, but that contract is justifiable, right? Because he's a left tackle.
Right.
And he is, a mid-tier. At times he's been upper mid-tier among starters, but you have to pay a price for that. You paid a price for Mike McGlinchey, right tackle. Tackles in general are hard to find. Wide receivers, maybe you pay the elite guys at running back and receiver. But beyond that, receivers easy to find, running backs are easy to find.
Yeah, especially when you find guys like Brandon Johnson, who you and I got a chance to catch up to in the locker room this week.
Yep.
And he talked about Kansas City. And I love this term because it reminds me of Jock Jams from ESPN.
Oh, my God.
Which was a fantastic CD, by the way.
Did you have Jock Jams 2?
Yes, I celebrated their entire catalog.
Didn't they do a Jock Jams 3?
I'm not sure. I
They
might
did
not have had
Jock
that.
Rock and Jock Jams. They had 2
Yes,
things.
yes. Jock Rock.
I had them.
I'm more
I
Jock
had 'em
Jams.
both.
You had them all?
I had a couple
Did you
of
collect
Jock
them all?
Rocks and a couple of Jock Jams, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, look, we were sports fans in the 90s, okay?
And ESPN was the hotness in the day.
I mean, back in those days.
SportsCenter was must-see
you
TV for guys our age.
Oh, I mean.
Like you planned your day around
You planned your
SportsCenter.
late night in college around watching the late Sports Center, in particular the Feel Good edition with Craig Kilborn. I mean, Craig Kilborn, to a subset of us Gen X guys who liked sports, Craig Kilborn's still an icon for his Sports Center catchphrases. Jumanji. And then I know he got in trouble for this one. He led into, I believe, a Montreal Canadiens highlight talking about how Montreal was the home of William Shatner, and it was William Shatner's birthday. And they did the same thing a day later. The Canadiens, of course, they played the Forum, which is in the city that gave us William Shatner, from Star Trek and everything else. You go, Big Bill. And finally, ESPN said, don't do that anymore. Anyway, we lost the plot already. Sorry.
We did.
Let's go back to Brandon Johnson.
Brandon Johnson and the Jump Jams.
Why did you have to go with Jock Jams? Why did you have to get me on that?
Because I got on there too, man. I was like, Jump Jam, Jock Jams. I love it. Here's Brandon Johnson.
They corners definitely their corners definitely play tough. A lot of jump jam, things of that nature. A lot of cover 4 tradition. That's what you see from Kansas City. So this is looking forward to the challenge.
What will we see to counteract that? I talked about it on yesterday's show. Where's some of the creativity? Because when you're facing cover 4 or quarters or the Fangio 6, which is taking this league by storm, motions. Like you can get Marvin Mims open a little. He could be your version of Tyreek Hill. He's not Tyreek Hill, but like Brandon Johnson, shifts and motions. Declare one thing, shift into something else, and get those physical corners off their track.
Confuse them a bit. And
Yes.
Marvin Mims talked about that as well. I mean, it's interesting. You're talking about these physical corners that are going to try to jam you at the line of scrimmage. It knocks off the timing, but if you can get past that, it opens things up downfield. There are going to be opportunities there for the Broncos. You're playing in Arrowhead in October on what looks like it's going to be a glorious night. So you're not talking about a snowy track, icy track like we've seen for some games over the years. The Broncos going to Kansas City. It's going to be pretty nice. So you can do whatever you want. And also for the Broncos, you just went against some physical corners with the New York Jets. Of course, Sauce Gardner, we know how physical and grabby he can be.
Right.
So you're actually in a situation where you're prepared for that, I think. And with all respect to Kansas City's corners, there isn't a Sauce Gardner in that group.
They do have some length.
Yeah.
Got like Jalen Watson out there, but the Broncos practice against length every day with Pat Surtain. Yeah. So they're kind of used to this, but I personally, Mace, want to see more creativity from Sean Payton. I mean, in this league where motion now is up to the league leader is Miami. No one will be shocked at 59%. And in 2017, that number was less than 10%. Look at how the league has changed. And I would like Sean Payton to kind of keep up with the Joneses and the trends.
Well, and the thing about motion, though, is they're trying to confuse you, but a lot of motion is designed to deceive, right? And try to get you to fall for the banana in the tailpipe, so to speak. And one thing that we've seen, unfortunately, from the Broncos on the defensive side this year is they've fallen for some of that motion.
Yes. Well, we talk about their
Way
run
too
defense
often.
too. This isn't just coverage and motion for coverage and getting Tyreek Hill open. Like this is your run. Your run fits have been poor. Look what the Jets did. All they did was do some motion, and the Broncos looked like they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
Against the run.
And so you add that on to the cake that's already baked when you're getting manhandled up front, as the Broncos have been so far this season. It's no wonder you're allowing 7 yards a carry. It's no wonder that you've allowed 755 rushing yards in 3 games. I mean, that's like half a season's worth in 15 days.
Right. It's incredible.
Yeah.
But it is a copycat league, and Pat Surtain, I had to ask him about it. Motion and shifts. How has this frustrated defenders across the league? Here's what Pat Surtain had to say.
Yeah, it's like a copycat league, man. Offenses, they run the same type of concepts in different ways, though. So I just say communication is key, being on the same page, because, once you not on the same page, things get out of sorts, and that's when things start to break away and the explosives come. Because the main thing on defense is communication, and when everybody's aligned and assigned, that's when we become dominant, I believe.
I love talking to smart football guys like you, Mace, and I loved Surtain's answer because he knew what we were talking about. Communicate.
Yes, communicate. Make sure everyone knows what's going on. You got to expect that. Shift happens, and you have to be ready for it.
You better have that in a headline at denversports.com. Friday morning, KC, shift happens.
I actually a long time ago was talking about a paradigm shift in a paper I wrote. This was like when I was a student, and I did say like my subhead was like paradigms : shift happens. Paradigm shift.
I like it. It's classic. Use it.
I don't know how. I think the professor probably groaned when he read that, but I don't know.
Maybe he smiled, but either way, be
if I can get
ready.
At least like a dad joke smile,
right?
It's like someone asked me on social media yesterday what I thought of. They said, "What would you say to a Wilson for Cousins trade?" I said, "What is a trade like you doing in a place like this?" I'm such a wise ass. I'm sorry.
Yeah. There you go. Orange and blue today, presented by Champagne. But here's the thing. Be on the same page. And Simmons brought this up as well. Justin Simmons, unprompted, talked about shifts and motions. And he brought up the fact of like, don't do more than what you've been asked to do, whether that's run fit or coverage responsibilities. What shifts and motions are doing in this league is creating mass confusion among the players that are trying to do too much.
And that means they're working. And the thing is, an expert shift can deceive. Like, let's look at how the Broncos got, I believe it was with their first touchdown against Washington. Remember, that was Nate Atkins kind of motioning over to one side.
Right.
And then Jaleel McLaughlin running to the other. Okay. You get Washington to, over adjust to the motion. You counter going in the other direction. Now, then the flip side of that is you can run that the other way. And you can run a play action off that, and then Nate Atkins will be open because they'll be saying we're not going to get caught by the shift. We're not going to fall victim to that. The next thing you know, Atkins is running free and making a play. It's everything has a process over the course of the season, right? There are echoes. When you do something in week 2, there are echoes that linger to week 5, week 8, and so on.
Because everybody's watching the film.
Yeah.
As George Lucas said about the prequels, I believe, it's like poetry. It rhymes. Like, yeah, you said, and that's the beautiful thing about Shanahan concepts.
I know
West Coast
confidence. One line that was not poetry.
Yeah.
Sand.
I hate sand. Obi-Wan would be quite upset. Anyway, like there's things that you build on, and I would just like to see more, whether it's, and specifically more running. We've talked about that on this show. Like, don't stop when it doesn't work once or twice. Don't go away from it. Set things up the way that you're supposed to be setting it up.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to do that. And I do wonder, like, if on the Broncos on the offensive side, if maybe not having as much motion as you'd expect, it's just part of the fact that they're really kind of installing an entirely new offense. and that you're trying to get some base concepts.
Well, let's
down.
get into that because and we'll talk about what McGlinchey told us about the cadence, right?
Yes.
Every week somebody's talking about cadence, or we're asking about cadence. What is the deal here, in your opinion? Like, is it they're installing a whole new offense and it just takes time? I mean, they can do more. We see a little more in practice than we see on Sundays. And it's like there's that you get to the field and it's almost as Sean Payton wants to simplify some things while also having super complicated language. I'm confused.
Also, you're trying to have fewer moving parts sometimes, right? Because the more you overthink the plumbing, the easier it is to stop up the drain. So sometimes, you have false starts, for example, right? A bunch of false starts like you had against Chicago. And that means, okay, maybe we got to pare this back a little bit. That's where the conversation about cadence comes in, right? It's something we might be talking about Friday after this game, because you're going to be dealing with more crowd noise again. They're going to, Kansas City's fans are going to try to get more false starts on you.
Mm-hmm.
So are we going to be talking about cadence again because the Broncos went on the road and we're dealing with noise? And are we talking about 5 false start penalties again? Goodness gracious, I hope not.
Ugh.
If the Broncos have 5 false start penalties in this game, I don't think they're going to pull off an upset the way they did in Chicago when they were able to overcome that. This is a little bit different of a challenge.
Yeah, a little bit of a different challenge. And does the streak matter? Something Justin Simmons talked about in the locker room this week is like, okay, it's a long streak. He's been there amongst the longest. I think he is the longest
tenured Bronco.
Yes,
because there are no players from Super Bowl 50 left.
Right.
He came
the year after.
The draft after that. So he came about 2.5 months later.
So to him specifically, but to the rest of this team, how much are they talking about the streak? Here's what Justin Simmons had to say.
I know it's hard to think about, I guess, on like the outside looking in, but it's a new team every year. I know obviously a lot of people want to talk about the streak and things like that, but the fact of the matter is, each and every year there's a new team, and as unfortunate as it is to be a part of something like that, it's new every year. You can never. It's not like it's the same team going up against each other for however many times in a row it's been. So it's a new year, and obviously a win would be great, but it would mean even more just of where we're at in the season and how much we need it.
Yeah, I mean, the 15-game losing streak, it does mean a lot to the fans. And it was interesting. Mike McGlinchey had an answer where he understood the weight of it.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from Justin Simmons, most of the players haven't endured that. And you don't necessarily want them burdened by the expectations on a negative side that can come with losing so many games to an opponent, right? I mean, you don't want that fatalism to stick in. Broncos have enough problems right now. We saw this in week 2. We saw it in week 3. We even saw it against the Jets. They have enough problems with that subconscious feeling of, oh my goodness, the sky is falling when one thing goes wrong, right? I hope that they're not burdened by the 15-game losing streak to Kansas City just because most of those players weren't around for it. I mean, I hope that isn't something they're thinking about. There's enough mental baggage that this team has to deal with right now. So they don't need that on top of it. I actually hope they're not thinking about the 15 games, except maybe Justin because he's experienced it. But at the same time, you hope he's using it as fuel. And Justin's actually had some good games against Kansas City as well.
Right.
We were talking about it before practice yesterday, a few of us in the media. Patrick Mahomes tends to make one mistake against the Broncos every time he plays them.
Mm-hmm.
And Justin Simmons has made him pay for those mistakes. Not in terms of losing the game, but he's gotten some picks off of Patrick Mahomes, right? So Simmons has actually come up big over the years against the Chiefs, even though his team hasn't.
Right. And we're waiting, of course, on Thursday's show when we do a little bit of pregame for you. Mace will be in Kansas City enjoying some delicious barbecue.
I hope so. Yeah.
I
That's
know.
the plan,
I know
right?
you will.
Finding a spot to do the show, right?
There's an advantage because we may or may not see Travis Kelce. We'll know for sure on Thursday, or maybe know a little bit more, but they don't really have a true number one. Now, watch out, because Rashee Rice, who again, like Isaiah Pacheco, was in the building pre-draft.
Here you go.
They loved Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice is a damn good receiver. I believe off the top of my head, and I should have looked this up before the show, but he's their leading snap getter at wide receiver. So get ready. You might see a breakout game from these no-name wide receivers, Sky Moore, Rashee Rice, Justin Ross, whoever.
Sky Moore's got to be a little bit more reliable catching the ball.
Mm-hmm.
He has the talent, he has the speed, he has the ability to get separation. But Kansas City is in the midst of this experiment of basically saying, all right, we got Patrick Mahomes, and then our wide receivers are kind of our young guys, a lot of who's that's. Hasn't affected them yet.
Right.
But that's what you can do when you have Patrick Mahomes. But it sort of lends credence to what I'm saying, that you can find wide receivers. It's really more about the quarterback, right? That's what it's all about.
Yeah. And they got a hell of a one.
Yeah, they do.
We'll
They
keep
got the best
talking.
one.
They do.
Y'all don't want to hear it. That's fine. Patrick Mahomes. I'm trying to think of a good analogy here.
Well, can I say something before you give me the analogy?
Yes.
Everything he's doing, we saw John Elway do as a youngster. He's the new version of John Elway. And you all hate that. But that's when I hear announcers be like, we've never seen this before. I think, 1986, John Elway.
Except Patrick Mahomes has a scheme tailored to him from the get-go.
Yeah, John had to fight with Dan.
Yes.
Sorry, Dan. I love
John
you.
Elway
RIP.
did not get the scheme suited to his talents until year 11,
Right.
when Jim Fossil came in to call plays under Wade Phillips. And then Elway exploded that year. Remember? Everyone's like, oh, Elway Renaissance. It was all about the scheme. John Elway was capable of doing that for a long time, but the scheme held him back.
Yes.
So Patrick Mahomes has the perfect scheme and the perfect coach for him. This is more like the AFC East with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick ruling the roost. And that's frightening to think of, because from 2001 through 2019, 19 seasons, the Patriots won 17 division titles. That's scary.
Yeah.
And that's, that's why I can, that's part of the layer of, that's another layer of glum on Broncos country, right? Not only has the team had 6 straight losing seasons, they're having to deal with Patrick Mahomes potentially twice a year, every year, maybe until the end of the 2030s. You and I'll be retiring by then. Crap.
Woo.
Oh my God.
Hey, the Broncos are good again.
Well, they can be good. It's just they have an incredibly narrow path to success, because it's going to be hard to win the division with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm. This is like shutting off the tractor beam. You have a very narrow path.
Stay on target.
Get it done.
Stay on target.
He's Andrew Mason at Mace Denver. Go listen to Jock Jams and like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Love you guys. OBT is a BFD. Stay tuned and stay frosty.